He was a real demon, and he professed to be a demon. He himself said he was a demon.
Certain stuff that how you do, like you sleep in the graveyard for like 3 days, 4 days to a week. Drink chicken, like animal blood. It's different stuff though, like, you know, I don't really think about it. This the life we live in, shit. We know the consequences, and everybody know the consequences in the streets. Dead in jail, and if you don't know the consequences, get out the streets.
You know what I'm saying? I said what I said. Stand on that.
Welcome back to another episode of Swamp Stories. For this one, we center around possibly the most dangerous rapper of all time. Some call him evil, others call him sociopathic, but overall, this is a man who embodies every single bad aspect of being a rapper. We all know generally the terrible things he was about, but oftentimes the story is much deeper than what's on the surface. At the end of the day, we're all human, and given bad circumstances, we're all capable of doing some horrible things. So before you celebrate his loss, let's dive into his life, what he's been through, and what led him down an evil path. Regardless, this video was definitely one of the craziest ones yet, and I promise you do not want to miss a single second. But before we get into it, let me run the intro. Welcome to Jacksonville, Florida, a city long known for old people, retirement homes, and enclosed pools. I bet you weren't expecting that, were you? It's the truth though, bruh, on my mama. No, really, Jacksonville has always been known as a great place to retire. In particular, buying a suburban home is cheap and there's a whole lot of land available. In fact, it's by far the biggest city in mainland America, and you can actually fit 19 San Franciscos inside of the city. This makes it easily the most spread out city in America, which is perfect for people who hate crime, neighbors, or really anything dangerous. But like anywhere in America, Jacksonville definitely has its hoods too. The hoods of Jacksonville exist almost exclusively on the north and west sides of the city. Here you'll find neighborhoods resemblant of Memphis or Baton Rouge, with a whole lot of open carrying, bail bond signs, and a ton of
abandoned homes all over, like this one, with ripped out electrical boxes, boarded up windows. Across the street I see bullet holes all over.
Ooh, but despite the daunting looks, it was always known for being laid back, donk riding, and crazy hair wearing. But in this video, you'll see how one man single-handedly changed the vibe from being overly player to being evil and possibly a worse drill scene than Chicago. No, for real, Jacksonville is bad, and in this video, we start in one of the North Side's most infamous hoods. The video begins in an infamous Section 8 project called the Hilltop Village, also known as the Bricks for short.
The worst hood in Jacksonville, like literally the worst hood, Hilltop Village Apartments.
I'm appalled about how these residents are living.
We're gonna go to Hilltop Apartments right now.
You for real? Don't, I want you to do that.
Statistically, the Bricks have always been the worst part of the city, with constant violence, robberies, raids, and more. In fact, it got so bad that the city mandated they put a metal fence around the property, only allowing residents on the premises. Well, here is where a man named Charles Jones, also known as Rick the Ruler, was seen as the landlord. Not exactly the person who collects the rents, but the man who's in charge of running all of the street activities in the project. For years, Rick was deeply feared on the north side, kind of like the boogeyman. Well, simultaneously, Rick was a father as well, with a son named Charles Jones Jr. who lived with him and his mother in the Bricks. Born in 1998, Charles Jr. experienced an extremely violent period on the north side, surrounded by nothing but chaos and violence. This made lending a normal childhood nearly impossible for Charles, as focusing on school and even sleeping at night were difficult tasks. He basically grew up roaming around the projects, seeing things that he probably should not have been seeing. Then at 11 years old, he witnessed something that truly no kid should ever see. It's a late afternoon in the Bricks, and Charles and his friends are hanging out in the courtyard. As they're playing games and minding their own business, suddenly they start hearing a loud confrontation. So Charles naturally looks over and sees his best friend's mom and her boyfriend getting into a fight. The argument gets heated, and sadly the man lets his emotions get the best of him. He whips out and makes a terrible decision. The man runs away, and everyone comes in to help the woman. They rush her to the hospital, where thankfully she survives. Regardless though, witnessing this at 11 would scar Charles Jr. for life.
It was so crazy. I was so close to my dog at the time. I'm watching him cry like, and then I'm seeing her lay down on the steps. She lift her arm straight up. She like, I'm shot. I'm like, this is really going on, you feel me? That night, like, that just fucked my mind up. That just showed me, like, cause you know when you a kid, you don't think death for real. That showed me that death is real, like, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, she actually died?
Nah, she ain't died, but I'm looking at her bleed and, you know what I'm saying?
Hilltop was stamped in his mind by this horrible incident, and it was no place to continue to grow up. So thankfully, at the age of 12, his father moved to the west side of Jacksonville, relieving him from all the problems of the bricks. So starting in the 6th grade, little Charles went to school and lived on the west side of Jacksonville, which really wasn't that much better. Okay, it was definitely better than living in the bricks, but it also wasn't Beverly Hills. Let me explain. Charles moved to the corner of 24th Street, located in an area full of low to middle class houses. Here, because it's also low income, things do happen, but it's nothing like the constant chaos of the bricks. Well, while living here, Charles befriended a man named Dwayne who lived right up the block on 25th. Little did Charles know the seemingly friendly Dwayne had an arrest record as long as Crip Mac's vocabulary. Okay, so it wasn't that long, but it included some disgusting crimes that I can't say on YouTube. All I can say is that Dwayne is registered. Regardless, Charles doesn't know this and Dwayne is often at his house hanging out. They quickly become homeboys, and that takes us to May 11th, 2011. It's a Wednesday afternoon and Junior comes home to an argument right outside of his house. Dwayne and his father are yelling at each other over something that seems to be minor. So little Charles thinks nothing of it and heads to his room. Regardless, he doesn't want this kind of energy near his son, so Big Charles asks Dwayne to leave his house. Unfortunately, Dwayne doesn't respect his wishes and the two get into a squabble. They get it in front of the house, and from what we know, Big Charles beats his Obviously, Dwayne is now even more pissed and he decides to head back home. Big Charles is kind of feeling good about himself and he really doesn't think much of it, just another fight in the hood. But little does he know, Dwayne has a couple of screws loose. At 12:30 a.m., little Charles is asleep in his room and Big Charles is in the living room watching TV. That's when he hears a loud knock on the door. So he gets up, sees that it's Dwayne, and decides to let him in. He assumes that Dwayne is there to make peace or to apologize for the argument, but sadly that's not the case. Either way, at first, Dwayne plays the part and he sits down to talk with Charles. They discuss what happened for a few minutes until Dwayne's emotions get the best of him and he whips out. Police would arrive to discover Charles lifeless on the ground and Dwayne sitting on the couch. Sadly, there was no saving Big Charles and they were left to investigate Dwayne. So what happened? Well, we had an argument on the couch and things went bad. It's simple as that. So right then and there, police put Dwayne in handcuffs and take him straight to jail. For Charles Jr., this was a terrifying and devastating moment of his life, something you could never recover from. His father was his idol and he always dreamed of making the football team to impress him. So to experience something like this at just 12 years old, I can't even imagine.
He just died, you know what I'm saying? When I was young, I was like 12, 13, so you know what I'm saying? We didn't get to do much together, like, you know? That shit put my head up. Like, that shit, like, my family, his side of the family, it was just a messed up situation. Like, I was like, damn, like, people really kill, like, take somebody you love from you, like.
The tragic incident deeply affected Junior's outlook on the world as his heart was starting to turn cold. Understandably, after the loss of his father, he began fighting in school and spiraling down a bad path. His fights were on a daily basis, he started getting suspended, expelled, and even carrying a blick. Basically, without a father figure, little Charles started to act way too old for his age, even going to clubs at just 13 years old.
That's when, like, I jumped out the porch, like, I got my first gun and, you know what I'm saying, evolving and seeing, like, different stuff coming at me so fast. And my first clubs, I went to my first clubs, fighting and all type of crazy stuff. It was just a lot going on around me, like, okay, we walk in the clubs, like, we walking to every club, like, 50 deep.
At this point, at just 13 years old, he was already jumped off the porch and hanging with the older guys in the neighborhood. And in order to prove himself and impress his peers, he started to act completely wild. Kind of like a young Gangsta Williams, he was already known for letting that heat blow, and that's why he earned the nickname of Fulio. But even though Fulio was now fully in the streets, he remained going to school for one particular reason. The boy loved football, and at this point he still had Division I dreams. For this reason, he steadily kept his grades up in order to make the football team. So even after all the tragedies in his life, there was still hope for a young Fulio. Because of his love for football, Fulio had a very successful freshman year of high school. But then, while everything is going well, sadly another tragedy would hit him hard. That introduces us to Fulio's best friend, an 11th grader named Aaron Man Brooks. Fulio and Aaron grew up together as kids in North Jacksonville, with basically Aaron being the big homie. Well, despite Fulio moving away, he and Aaron actually remained close as Aaron wanted to see him succeed. Aaron was actually a good football player himself, but at this point he was completely mixed up in the dangerous North Jacksonville politics. And that takes us to April 14th, 2014, 9:30 p.m. It's a Monday night and Aaron is walking back home after picking up some food. Well, little does he know, a car has been slowly following behind him ever since he left the store. Eventually he notices the lights, looks behind him, and sees a man hopping out of a car. So instantly Aaron starts sprinting down 4th Street, but sadly the man catches up. The neighbors call 911 after hearing shots and Jacksonville police arrive. Unfortunately, they don't see a victim, so they just write it off as a false alarm. What? Maybe Tupac wasn't lying when he said, "They don't give a f about us." Like, how is it even possible that you did an investigation when somebody was literally on the street? Well, Jacksonville sucks, and because of this, Aaron's family had to worry all night, where is our son? Is he at a friend's house? Where did he go? And sadly, that takes us to the next morning. It's 7 in the morning and a group of high schoolers are walking to the bus stop. As they're approaching the bus stop on 4th Street, sadly that's where they notice their classmate Aaron. They're obviously terrified and they call 911. The police come and figure out who it is, and word starts to spread around Jacksonville. For Fulio, he was in second period when he discovered the news, and once he learned, he completely dropped to his knees. He's absolutely devastated that he just lost his best friend, but quickly the pain turns into anger. This is Fulio's breaking point. The loss of Aaron tipped a 15-year-old Fulio over the edge as he no longer saw life in a positive manner, and now he wanted to give up on football. Now he was purely angry and wanted to just be a demon in the streets. And during his sophomore year of high school, an opportunity to be in the streets would arise. Or at least he thought. He begins hanging with the older homies who he used to hang out with when he first moved to the west side of Jacksonville. When he used to hang out with them, they were all kids, but now they're all grown up and they're repping a clique called Headfirst ENT, also known as HFE. HFE were basically a group of teenagers who jumped off the porch together and didn't really rep a block. Instead, they just repped West Jacksonville. The story goes that after giving up on football, Fulio started to approach them to hang out.
Like, hey, remember me? I was the little kid who moved to West Jacksonville and used to be your friend.
Unfortunately, HFE still saw him as the broke little dirty kid from the bricks. So basically, they'd only hang out with him in private, and once he approached them trying to be HFE, they completely laughed and mocked him.
Come on, blood.
They took Fulio as a joke, and they did not want him running with them in the streets. In particular, a guy Fulio looked up to named HFE Big Baby went from his cool big homie to "get out of my face, lil dude." This rejection could not have come at a worse time. Fulio lost his father and his best friend, so now he was really just looking for family. Like, damn, I don't have my dad, my best friend, and the people I used to hang out with are treating me like trash. So an already angry Fulio lets his emotions get the best of him. It's me versus everyone. He goes on social media and makes the bold decision to diss Big Baby and the rest of the HFE members. I don't care who you think you are and how many people you hang with, I'm not scared of any of you. This is obviously a risky move as Fulio lives in their neighborhood, goes to school in their neighborhood, and he's way outnumbered. But this dude does not care. He's the definition of a crash out. And that takes us to December 10th, 2014. It's an early Wednesday morning in West Jacksonville and HFE Big Baby is waiting for the bus. He has his headphones in and is completely zoned out, no idea of what's going on around him. So little does he know, a man in a mask is creeping up on him from across the street. The man in the mask walks right up to the bus stop, and with HFE Big Baby not paying attention, he lets loose. Police quickly arrive to the scene, but sadly it's far too late.
Let it be justice served, oh God.
A small prayer group made their presence known in Grand Park today. They prayed for healing.
All that they need is in the house, Lord.
Their church sits at the intersection of 13th and Canal, where this morning this was the scene as police roped it off, gathering evidence. Pastor David Bennett says he heard at least 15 rounds go off around 6:30 a.m.
Well, I was getting down in the house because I heard the rounds going off. So I was just getting out, and my kids were getting out too in the house.
When he came outside, he saw the body on the street. We now know the victim is 16-year-old Devron Crowden. This is an older picture of him his grandmother sent us. To his friends, he was known as simply Big Baby.
The word quickly spreads around the community, prompting grieving and even protests.
Now protesters are taking to the street near the shooting scene, closing the roads once again to demand answers.
For Big Baby's classmates, they would receive the news from an announcement at school. Obviously, everyone is shocked and saddened, but Big Baby's close friends, they're devastated. Then quickly, the pain turns into anger, and they're eager to know who's responsible. Well, while everyone is posting commemoration for Big Baby, Fulio was doing the exact opposite. He instantly clowns Big Baby on Facebook, making everyone assume that he did it, or at least that he had something to do with it. As soon as they see this, HFE automatically assumed that it was Fulio who did it, and now they're on his trail. But because they're at school and don't have weapons, they first seek to fight him. So lunchtime comes around and 3 HFE members go searching for Fulio. They spot him in line at the cafeteria, they surround him, and they start whooping his Quickly though, the security guards break it up, and the sides go their separate ways. Whether or not Fulio actually eliminated Big Baby, HFE take it as a fact, and now they want him gone. Fulio knows this, and he also knows that once he leaves the campus, the consequences might be serious. So instead of waiting for the school day to finish, he goes to the bus stop early in order to ride home safely. So Fulio hops on the bus, and thankfully there's no rivals aboard. He feels like he's home safe. Long story short, the bus arrives at 2:30 and Fulio hops off with no worries in the world. In fact, he's so not worried that instead of rushing home, he walks to the bushes to roll up. Well, as he's walking to the bushes, all he hears is He's hit up from behind and he loses all feelings in his legs, so he desperately tries to crawl into the bushes, but sadly he can't move fast enough. That's when he senses somebody right behind him and he turns around and looks up. A man in a mask is standing over him and Fulio figures that this is it. This is how it all ends. But after making eye contact, the man shakes his head and simply runs away. For whatever reason, he spares Fulio, but still, Fulio is gravely injured. So he calls 911 for an ambulance and police arrive in 3 minutes. When they arrive, he's relieved and he figures that they're gonna tend to his wounds. But instead, they simply open a notebook and start asking him questions. Was it you who killed Big Baby this morning?
Man, what? Just take me to the hospital.
Fulio is frustrated that they're not even helping him, but thankfully an ambulance arrives in under 10 minutes. After undergoing surgery, he thankfully survives, but he still has a major recovery left.
Yeah.
But still, this incident woke him up good. Or at least it should have. What this should have taught him is that trolling somebody's death is not a good idea, especially in Jacksonville. And that's assuming that he isn't responsible for Big Baby and only that he trolled him after his death. But whether or not he was the one who did it, the beef was still definitely on. Thankfully though, Fulio would be completely off the streets for the next 5 months as he had to relearn how to walk after having hip surgery. Still though, what happened to him had serious implications in Jacksonville. And that brings us right back to his original hood, the Hilltop Village. After learning of what happened to Fulio, the Hilltop Village were ready to go to war for him. They knew he was by himself against everyone in West Jacksonville, so they stepped up in his defense. Well, not to say that HFE wasn't intimidating, but Hilltop Village is a whole different animal. So let me introduce you to their main factors. Basically, all of Fulio's early childhood friends didn't make it in school and jumped into the streets. These would be Kendre, Trey D, Dirk, Kojak, T-Shot, Spaz, and many more, trust me. Essentially, these are all the teenagers who stepped up on Fulio's behalf against HFE. Things are about to get crazy in Jacksonville, but while Fulio is recovering in the hospital, sadly he would take another tragic loss. It's now March of 2015 and Fulio is almost done with his recovery. He's finally walking again and he'll be back on the streets of Jacksonville in no time. Well, while Fulio is away recovering, his homies in the bricks are outside wilding. In particular, his 16-year-old cousin named Kendre jumped off the porch and is now riding around in Stolos. He's recently known for hitting licks, taking cars, and really doing anything in the books. Well, quickly, his bad behavior would catch up to him. March 19th, 2015. Kendre Alston is joyriding a stolen car through North Jacksonville. After riding around for about 15 minutes, he decides to head back to the bricks. So he turns into the gate, and that's when he notices a Jacksonville sheriff behind him. After running his place, the sheriff realizes that it's a stolen car, so he hits his lights. Instantly, Kendre speeds off and he drives to the cemetery right across the street. As he's driving through the grass, he notices another sheriff waiting at the exit. The officer is standing outside of his car, expecting Kendre to slow down and put his hands up. But Kendre has no plans for stopping as he absolutely gasses towards the exit. As the car is flying towards him, thankfully the officer is able to jump out of the way, but that's when Kendre smacks into his car. After crashing, somehow Kendre is able to get up as he hops out of the car and begins running away. However, officers notice a blick in his hands, and sadly that's when they have to do what they do. This was a devastating loss for Fulio, his family, and the entire north side of Jacksonville. Kendre was one of his closest childhood friends, so this was yet another terrible loss for Fulio. But not only was it devastating, but the community also felt like it was potentially unjustified.
Well, police say that 16-year-old who was shot and killed yesterday was driving in a stolen car with another person. Both of them had stolen handguns, and they used the car to allegedly try to run over a police officer before leading that police officer on a foot pursuit. But community activists say in light of all the recent police shootings, it would help if police had video evidence. This Facebook picture was posted on Kendre Alston's page by one of his friends 2 hours after he was shot by a police sergeant following a car pursuit and chase. Even though police say Alston flashed a gun, community activist Diallo Sekou is skeptical about what really happened. He says body cameras on police would leave nothing to question.
Which brings in a little bit of responsibility and transparency of the sheriff department to be able to see hands-on what it is that they were dealing with directly.
Because there's no footage, we'll truly never know what happened, so I guess we've got to take the officer's word. And now we fast forward to a very important chapter. At this point, Fulio is home from the rehab center and the beef with HFE is fully on. November 3rd, 2015. It's a late afternoon in West Jacksonville and HFE members are outside hanging out on Ellis Street. In particular, two of these are twin brothers AMP and Bando, who happen to be Big Baby's best friends. Well, because the beef has been dry, the HFE members are outside comfortable, and in fact, Bando walks to the store by himself. So at 7 o'clock, he casually walks up Palafox Street towards the liquor store. Well, as he's walking up the street, he randomly hears an eruption of gunfire. Bando is shocked and he instantly starts running back to the block to protect his brothers. Unfortunately though, it's too late as his twin brother AMP is critically hit. The ambulance arrives relatively quickly, but sadly it's far too late. All of his family and friends come around to grieve. It's truly a tragic scene. By nighttime, after police clear the scene, they get the candlelights together and they grieve his loss. But while all of this is going on, they all start to wonder one thing. Where is his twin brother? So instantly, Bando's family and friends start calling him, but strangely, he doesn't pick up. So now everyone is nervous. Where could Bando be? The HFE members remember that he went somewhere right before things cracked off, but they don't recall exactly where. So now all of his family and friends begin to scour the neighborhood. After scouring through the neighborhood, they sadly discover Bando a block down from the store. How could this be possible? He was over 4 blocks away from the scene. Everyone of course is devastated, but they're also extremely confused. Did the assailants go back around and find him, or what other explanation is there? Well, as it turns out, Bando somehow caught a stray while he was running back to the scene. The chances of this happening are like 1 in a million, but either way the family was absolutely devastated. Now the big question is who did this? Everyone instantly assumes that it had to be Fulio. Because this coincidentally happened right after he got on his feet and also the Facebook trolling, it was pretty obvious that he was somehow responsible. So at this point, everyone in the streets of Jacksonville is under the impression that Fulio eliminated Big Baby, AMP, and Bando, 3 bodies for a 16-year-old. Due to all of this, Fulio was truly becoming known as a demon from the bricks. And sadly, from here, things would only get worse. Sadly, after the losses of AMP and Bando, HFE would lose a ton more members. These would include both of Big Baby's brothers, Lenford, Lil Rap, Bubba, John, Blow Crazy, and Dion. Not to be dramatic or disrespectful, but Fulio and Hilltop were absolutely wiping out HFE. And because the beef was so one-sided, they were pretty much out and about doing the most random things. And that takes us to Christmas Eve 2015. The holiday spirit is here, and it's a joyous and wonderful time for most people. Families are gathered together and children are awaiting their presents from Santa. Oh, it's the best time of the year, a time where people can leave the street activities alone. Just kidding, cause for the Hilltop boys, they're on their usual behavior. Instead of being gathered around with their families, Fulio and his boys are out and about in the suburb of Orange Park, Florida. Basically, they spend the day window shopping, talking to girls, and getting food at the food court, a typical day for teenagers. Then when the mall closes at 8, they decide to go to the movie theater. Long story short, they movie hop for hours and then empty into the parking lot at midnight. As they're walking through the parking lot, for whatever reason, Fulio whips out a blick and all of his homies do too. They basically gather around their car blasting music and wave their blicks in the air, which definitely alarmed the suburban community. The boys are used to doing this in the projects with 0 consequences, so they're not expecting anything to happen. Then at 12:15 they begin hearing sirens, and before they know it, they're surrounded by Orange Park police. Welp, just like that, Fulio catches his very first case. So instead of spending Christmas with his family, Fulio spends the day in the local jail. Thankfully, he's still a minor, but regardless, this is a pretty serious case. In Florida, illegal possession of a stolen weapon plus reckless endangerment, not something to scoff at all. So during the holiday season, Fulio is faced with the potential of 5+ years in jail. However, because he has no record and he's able to convince the judge that he's a good kid who simply made a mistake, the judge decides to be lenient. They ultimately sentence him to 1 month in juvenile hall, not knowing that he's an absolute menace in the streets of Jacksonville. Well, regardless, Fulio spends Christmas Day to late January in juvenile hall until he's finally released. Demon's back. But actually, not quite. Let me explain. At this point, HFE had taken so many losses that they basically threw the white flag. So realistically, Fulio no longer had to worry about anyone in the streets of Jacksonville. He's now 18 years old with a whole life ahead of him, and not to mention no criminal record. He can take the GED and then go play JUCO football, or he can get a job, find a talent, who knows, something positive. So over the next year and some change, this is exactly what Fulio does. He tries to live a very positive life. Yeah, I've allegedly got some bodies under my belt, but that's the past. I'm older now and I can move on. By all accounts, Fulio is headed in a great direction, but then out of nowhere, a horrible incident would ruin it. And that introduces us to Fulio's first cousin and very close friend Zion Brown. Kind of like Fulio, Zion is a young dude in the streets, lost and trying to find his way. However, unlike his cousin Fulio, Zion is known to be a good-hearted kid who's simply born into the wrong circumstance. Well, if Zion's not hanging with his big cousin, he's always hanging with a close childhood friend named Trey Shorty, somebody who he finds to be trustworthy. But little does he know, despite being day one homies, Trey Shorty is not a trustworthy friend. In fact, he has no loyalty to his best friend Zion. Instead, he's only truly loyal to another friend group, one called the Aces. The Aces are a crew located in the south suburb of Orange Park, and they're led by a guy named Young and Ace. And these guys, despite being from the suburbs, are with all of the activities and are not to be trusted. The Aces are hungry for money and they're willing to cross anyone to get it. So sadly, Fulio's little cousin Zion would learn the hard way. February 5th, 2017. It's a Sunday afternoon and Trey and Zion are set to hang out like any other weekend of their lives. But on this day, little does Zion know, Trey wants to rob him. So at 3 p.m, Trey casually pulls up to his house. They sit down on the couch, play video games, and it feels like a day just like any other. But then out of nowhere, Trey reaches over and takes Zion's blick from him. At first, Zion obviously thinks he's playing, but then Trey ups the blick on him. He then proceeds to take some of his possessions and he ends up walking out the door. A car quickly pulls up to pick him up and Trey is off in the distance. At this moment, Zion is absolutely stuck and lost for words. What just happened? Did my childhood best friend just take my blick and rob me? There's no way. When reality finally kicks in, Zion feels nothing but pure betrayal. My childhood best friend really just robbed me. Why in the world would he do this? So Zion instantly starts informing his homies, and in particular, one guy is pissed. This would be a close friend from Hilltop named Antoine, but also known as Y&R Cho. From all accounts, Antoine is a stepper, not somebody you want to mess with. And once he learned about what happened to his little homie Zion, he was willing to go out and get revenge. For the next few weeks, Antoine surfs around the city of Jacksonville looking for Trey Shorty. I want to rob you and get all the stuff back from my little homie. Well, finally in mid-May, Antoine catches Trey Shorty alone in his car and he decides to push up on him. And from what we know, not only does Antoine take all of his stuff, but he also finishes it off with some violence. He pops him in the leg to send a message. Don't mess with Zion or anyone from Hilltop ever again. Thankfully, Trey survives, but Antoine's intimidation tactic did not work out very well. Instead of being scared, Trey Shorty now wages war with Antoine. You put me in the hospital, I'm not gonna let that slide. May 27th, 2017. By this time, Fulio is already an up-and-coming rapper, which I'll get to in a second. And because of this, he has a place in Daytona Beach where he can duck off from the dangerous Jacksonville streets and focus on his music. Well, on this particular Saturday, Zion desperately wants to spend the rest of the weekend with Fulio in Daytona. However, because the two recently got into an argument, Fulio does not want his cousin Zion around.
He called me, he was like, "Big cuz." That's my cousin, you know what I'm saying? He like, "Cuz, let me come to Daytona with you. I'm trying to come to Daytona." I was mad at him for a dumbass reason. Like, I straight told him, "No, bro, you can't come with me. I don't f*** you right now." Hung up on him.
So instead of spending the weekend with his cousin in Daytona, he resorts to staying home and inviting over Antoine. Little does Zion know, Antoine is being hunted by the Aces. To him, it's just like any other Saturday. Antoine comes over to his house and they sit on the couch playing video games. And during the course of the afternoon, Antoine posts an Instagram story clearly showing that he's at Zion's house. This is pretty typical and Zion doesn't really think anything of it, but little does he know, this is the worst mistake Antoine could make. Trey Shorty sees the story and automatically recognizes Zion's house. So instantly he and an unidentified friend make some horrible plans. That takes us to 1:15 in the morning. Everyone is knocked out asleep on the couch while Antoine is up on his phone. That's when suddenly everyone is woken up to a burst of shots. Antoine instantly grabs Zion's sisters and drags them behind the couch. Then when the shots finally stop, Zion gets up from the other side of the couch to make sure his sisters are okay. But simultaneously, that's when glass shatters and a man comes jumping through the window. The intruder then gets up and runs into the living room, and there all he sees is Zion. And even though Zion isn't his target, the man still makes a terrible decision. Ambulances quickly arrive, but sadly it's far too late to save Zion.
Well, Tom, she's describing this as a home invasion in which the gunman made forced entry into the back door. Now, I got to tell you that what's really disturbing about all this is that while all this was happening, there were some small children in this home who had to witness the horror unfold right before their eyes.
This was a tragic moment in Jacksonville, especially because Zion wasn't even the target and he was known to be a great guy. But on a positive note, both Antoine and Zion's sisters were able to recover in the hospital. While in Daytona, Fulio would receive the devastating news. My little cousin, no way, the one who never bothered anyone. Fulio was crushed by the news, but on top of this, he even started to blame himself. If I just would have let him come to Daytona, this never would have happened.
I was crushed. Cause it's like, I could have saved him, like, you know? That shit ain't like, that shit like crushed me, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yet another devastating and senseless loss in the life of Fulio. Previous to this incident, Fulio had actually been doing pretty well. His rap career was starting to take off, he wasn't involved in any crime, and on top of this, he was living a pretty good life. But just like back when he was in high school, whenever he takes a devastating loss, it sends him down a really bad path. It's almost like whenever things are going good, something bad happens, and then he turns into a complete destructive demon. So just like that, the loss of Zion reignited the evil flame inside of Fulio. Now Fulio's first question is who did this? This is when his family and friends tell him about Trey Shorty and instantly he wants revenge on him. But then they inform him about the Aces in general and that a rapper named Young and Ace has been dissing Zion. This is all it takes. Fulio's savage mode is fully activated on the Aces. So first he discovers that both Trey Shorty and Young and Ace live in the suburb of Orange Park, Florida. And after watching music videos and examining social media posts, he deduces exactly where they live. In particular, he finds the exact address of Young and Ace's mom's house. This is bad news. Fulio instantly sends a message of revenge for his cousin Zion. So just a week after the incident, Ace's mom's house is absolutely lit up.
Them boys shot my house up. I was right there on the bed, me and my little brother Quan. They shot my house up from right here. This is my mama's right here. They shot my mama's house up. They shot this part right here. My mama was in the room. They shot that up.
Just like that, a new beef is stamped in the Jacksonville streets. On one side, you have the Ace Top Killers, also known as ATK, which is obviously led by Young and Ace. By this time, Ace is already a successful rapper, giving him the advantage because he has money and reach. On top of this, instead of claiming a specific block like Fulio, the Aces are spread out all throughout Jacksonville. They can basically hit you from any angle, and they definitely have the financial backing to do so. But as we know, Fulio was not the type to bow down to anyone. He's definitely up for the challenge. On top of this time around, he's not just representing Hilltop. In fact, he has a gang behind him. He would call them KTA, which stands for Kill Them All. Basically, KTA would be everyone from Hilltop and surrounding areas who mess with Fulio. So now the beef is officially on. KTA versus ATK. Jacksonville is divided. But in the meantime, there is hope that the beef settles down. Let me explain. After collecting the necessary evidence, phone records, and witness testimony, Trey Shorty is arrested for the murder of Zion Brown. So in theory, because the man who's responsible for kicking off the beef is now arrested, the beef could possibly end. But when you're dealing with a maniac like Fulio, you still want revenge in a major way. And that takes us to June 5th, 2018. It's a major day for Ace and his family as his younger brother Quan just graduated high school and it's his friend 2-3's birthday. So of course it's celebration time and Ace wants to do something for his boys. However, because of the existing beef, being out and about in Jacksonville is not a smart idea. And because of this, both the graduate and the birthday boy do not want to go out. It's just too dangerous. But for whatever reason, Ace is not scared of Fulio and his goons and he tells his boys, let's go out. Pretty much everyone except Ace is hesitant to go out, but because he's the big dog, his word goes. So now the plan is to hit them all so Ace can get them fresh, and then for family to gather around for dinner after. At 6 o'clock, Ace, Quan, 2-3, and a friend named 4 hit the mall. The particular mall is located all the way on the eastern end of Jacksonville, so they're really not worried about seeing ops. Realistically, if they're in and out quick and move low-key, they'll be completely fine. But the problem is that they do the complete opposite. Not only are they loud and take their time, but they also go on Instagram Live clearly showing their location. They're simply enjoying the moment, and because they're gonna meet their family at the restaurant at 7, they're really not too worried. So at 7 o'clock, the 4 boys gather with their family at the Wasabi Steakhouse just minutes from the mall. The dinner goes amazing as Quan and 2-3 are surprised with gifts and a whole lot of affection. Then the dinner finishes at 8:30 and they all empty out into the parking lot. Here, they're all tipsy, gathered around, and having the time of their lives. But little do they know, the rivals saw the previous Instagram Live at the mall, and they're on their way to hunt them. Everyone is oblivious except for Quan, who for whatever reason has an intuition that they need to leave. So he approaches Ace and tells him that he thinks they should leave, but Ace blows him off and tells him to simply relax. Time is ticking before the rivals arrive in the area, and coincidentally, 2-3 now wants to leave as well. He tells Ace that he wants to leave to go link with the girl, but Ace tells him to relax and that can wait till later. At this point, it's almost 9 o'clock, and the birthday boy and the graduate both want to leave. What are we still doing in this parking lot? It's time to leave.
You need to
Well, shortly after 9 o'clock, Ace finally concedes and they all hop in the car and take off. But right as they're leaving, the rivals arrive in the area. 2-3 is driving, Ace is in the passenger seat, and Quan and 4 are in the back. At this point, they're all in good spirits. 2-3 is about to go link with the girl, Ace is happy the night went smoothly, Quan is relieved that nothing happened, and 4, he's probably just happy too. Well, as they leave the mall, they end up at a red light right down the street. While they're sitting at the light not paying attention, a car full of KTA members pulls alongside them. Then out of nowhere, all they hear is BAM! An absolute barrage of fire hits the car. Everyone ducks down and Ace yells at 2-3 to drive away, but they're not accelerating and there's no response from 2-3, so Ace simply hops out of the car. When the shots finally stop and the rivals screech away, Ace crawls back to the car to check on his friends. The car is completely riddled, and once he looks inside, he simply drops to his knees. Sadly, Quan, 2-3, and 4 are all gone. Then when Ace is on the ground grieving, he realizes that he's hit too. An ambulance quickly arrives and thankfully Ace survives. When he finally wakes up, he thinks that had to be a nightmare. There's no way that just happened. But sadly, this is when he's hit with the horrendous news.
We continue to follow local breaking news from the south side. The search is on for a killer. 3 people shot and killed, another wounded critically in an apparent shooting on the south side near the UNF campus and St. John's Town Center. People are telling us that they're shocked that something like this happened in that area, an area not known for this type of crime. The way this all came down is apparently one car is sitting there, another car drives up beside it, and somebody in that second vehicle opens fire to the 4 who were sitting in the adjacent car. 3 people died right there at the scene.
Your brother passed on his birthday, and his 2 friends passed as well. Ace is absolutely crushed beyond comprehension. You couldn't imagine such a bad outcome, especially on such a joyous day. The next morning, Ace posts that he tried to cover up 2-3 and that he's simply sorry. And he also thanks God that he's still alive. But regardless, this is just sad, sad, sad.
I supposed to been able to save all of them. I supposed to went with them. I be asking God like, why? Why not me instead of them? You feel what I'm saying? They been around me my whole life. They look up to me. You feel me? I was the oldest in the car. Like all that, I gotta deal with their mamas. Like I be calling, checking up on them, see how they doing, but that ain't enough. They mama asked me why. I don't know why. My mama asked me why they took her son from me. I don't know why. You feel what I'm saying? My mama asked me every day why. I don't got no answers for her. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why. I'm lost. I feel like it's my fault. I always feel like that. I'ma forever feel like that. Everybody say don't feel like that, but you don't know how it feel. Like it's like everybody on your watch, like they right here with you. How could you let this happen? You know what I'm saying? Like I supposed to been on my pivot. How could I slip? You know what I'm saying? How could I slip? You know what I'm saying? Why I wasn't on point?
Not only does he start to blame himself, but from here the situation would only get worse for the young rapper. Because of the severity of the incident, it was constantly all over the local news. And given that Young and Ace is a popular rapper and the lone survivor, his picture was all over the broadcast. As most people feel terrible for him in this situation, one particular person has other intentions. And surprisingly, this time it's not Fulio. Instead, it's the owner of a local gun store who automatically recognizes Ace's picture. He sees on the news that Ace is a convicted felon, and he realizes that he entered his store, which is actually a federal crime. So while Ace is in the hospital recovering and grieving, a man is out there trying to get him arrested. So just days later, police arrived to the hospital and put Ace in handcuffs. Not only did he lose his brother and 2 friends, but now he's facing a felony. Possibly the worst week he could ever have imagined. That was just a crazy story, but now we circle back to the man of the hour. The obvious question now is Fulio responsible? But come on, we all know the answer. But to make matters even worse, Fulio has zero sympathy for Ace and his family. You took my cousin Zion, so I took your brother and 2 friends. So the now locally famous Fulio decides to take his trolling to the next level of disrespect. He decides to make a Rest in Piss 2-3 shirt and post it on Instagram.
You wore a t-shirt that said Rest in Piss 23.
Yeah.
with a picture of him on the shirt.
Yeah.
But Fulio is such a crash out that he simply doesn't care. In fact, he even takes it to the next level. Shortly after the tragic incident, he releases a song called F That, where he says, "Oh, you a demon? Well, I turned your whole team into angel dust." He also snitches on his friend by saying could have killed the rapper, but Lil Ron f***ed up the drill. Fulio obviously doesn't care about consequences, and he's basically owning up to the incident. And the craziest part is that in the song, he gives up his mom's address, basically saying, "Come do something, I bet you won't. I bet you won't. I bet you won't." Y'all know that song. The point is that Fulio is a next level demon. He doesn't seem to care about his life, consequences, or anything that happens to his rivals. So after eliminating 3 aces, he's starting to feel like the top dog of Jacksonville. Nobody can mess with me. However, when you're beefing with another big dog like Young and Ace, what goes around comes around too. And that takes us to July 23rd, 2018. It's a hot Friday afternoon in Jacksonville, and Fulio and his boys are outside hosting a block party. Over 500 people are there with music, food, games, and overall good vibes. Given the large advertisement and size of the party, Fulio and KTA are not worried about rivals. This is our city, we're up on the score, and we ain't worried. Well, on the other hand, ATK are not thrilled when they see the flyer, and they see this as an opportunity to slide. Regardless, as the day turns into the night, the block party goes by with no incidents. Then the night comes around, the kids go inside, and it's just Fulio, his homies, and some girls outside.
They drinking, twerking, and having a time of their lives.
But little do they know, the aces are on their way to disturb the peace. At 9:50, a car full of aces approaches the party. They drive around a couple times looking for Fulio, but he's nowhere to be found. They're frustrated that they can't find him, so now they resort to the second option. At 10 p.m., they spot Fulio's best friend named Trey D walking by himself down the street. So that's when an ATK member hops out of the passenger seat and walks right up to Trey D. Bang! Yet another devastating loss for Fulio. Not only was Trey D a close childhood friend, but he was also known to be Fulio's enforcer. In fact, Fulio even referred to him as 8, allegedly due to the 8 bodies he caught. Yeah, Trey D was a major enforcer for Fulio. The loss of Trey D truly hurt Fulio, to the point where he dedicated a song to him called Dirk's Story. In the song, he talks about how they started off hating each other as kids, but then became brothers over the years. And more importantly, he wages revenge on his behalf. But thankfully, over the next few months, the beef would be calm and there would be no revenge. However, this wasn't a sign of peace, but rather that both sides were becoming harder to find. With Fulio and Ace's careers on the rise, both of them were pretty much always out of the hood. And more importantly, whenever they'd go out of town, their entire crews would come with them, meaning that the Jacksonville streets were calm for whatever those days were. Still though, during this period, the beef was forcing people in Jacksonville to choose a side. You're either with the Aces or with Fulio. For some people it was an easy choice, but for others who had ties on both sides, it was a pretty big dilemma. And that introduces us to a very important person named Willie Boscoon Anderson.
What up, man?
Willie is Fulio's older cousin and somebody he looked up to a lot as a kid. He was a well-known hustler, ladies' man, and feared street dude in Jacksonville. Well, unfortunately, this kind of lifestyle got Willie a 10-year prison sentence in 2013. While he was away, Fulio deeply missed his cousin as he would constantly post about Free Willie. Somehow these wishes would come true as Willie was released after 5.5 years. Yay, Willie is home. The family well, it's more complicated than what you think. Unfortunately, Willie has bloodlines on both sides of the deadly beef. On one side, Fulio is his cousin, but on the other side, Queso is actually his half-brother, the son of his dad. So as you would imagine, this put Willie in a major predicament. I don't want to cut off my cousin and his family, but I also don't want to beef with my blood brother. So naturally, when Willie comes home, he tries to be cool with both sides. I don't want any beef, and I have nothing to do with what you guys got going on. So in the meantime, he tries his best to stay out of the beef, stay out of prison, and pursue his rap career. He releases songs like How I'm Comin' and How We Comin', which both absolutely slap. Well, the songs and his reputation give him a slight buzz in Jacksonville, enough to headline a club called Paradise Gentlemen's Club. And that takes us to January 15th, 2019. It's a big day for Willie as he's set to perform at a club for the very first time. So naturally, he, his father, and his brother Queso head to the club together in a Chevy Tahoe. They arrive to the club, Willie performs, and overall it's a great night. So at 2 in the morning, they exit out of the club truly feeling good about themselves. Big bro just came home from prison and he's already doing well for himself. It's a cause for a celebration. Well, after the club, they all hop in the Chevy Tahoe and they head their way home. As they're driving up Interstate 95, they have no idea that people have been following them since the club parking lot. Well, at 2:15, they pull off the interstate and are forced to stop at a red light. This is when 3 cars surround them and roll down their windows. The car is absolutely torched and everyone inside is hit. After being rushed to the hospital, thankfully Queso and his father survive. But Willie, sadly, he doesn't make it. As a father, taking your son to his first performance, and for this to happen, I can't even imagine.
The man who died was Robinson's 25-year-old son, Willie Addison, who was an aspiring rapper.
His dad, Abdul Robinson, was driving.
I guess 2 or 3 cars pulled up on the side of us, shot inside our car over 100 times, killed my son in the front seat, shot my son in the back, in the head 3 times, shot in the back myself twice.
It's a story hard to imagine, but Robinson says it was reality and he had to act fast.
Now, here's the important question. Is Julio evil enough to call a hit on his own cousin and uncle just to get to Queso? Or at least, if you knew that your cousin and uncle were in the car, why would you allow this to happen? Well, in case you had any doubts, Julio would respond in the most evil way possible. He posts on his story, "Now I'm smoking on my cousin Willie." Crossing family lines over street beef and now saying that you're smoking your own cousin who you used to look up to. This dude Julio is absolutely heartless, and from what we know, this tragic incident completely split up Julio's family for good. Well, as you would expect, this tragedy would not come without consequence. Understandably, Queso was hurt beyond comprehension, and now he wants revenge on Julio in any way possible. And that takes us to February 25th, 2019. It's a typical Monday afternoon at Julio's mom's house, and Julio and his little homie are hanging out on the couch. This would be a 16-year-old Hilltop resident named Adrian Garner, also known as Lil Bibby. Well, Bibby is restless and he doesn't want to be inside doing nothing. However, Julio being more grown and knowing everything that's going on, he advises Bibby to not go outside.
Don't walk nowhere, bro. Sit here with me until it's time for you to go wherever you need to go, you know what I'm saying? Wait till the sun go down or something.
Bibby, being young and reckless, does not want to hear this.
Man, I ain't worried about none of that, man. I'm yada, 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 man. I don't even care, man. I'm in the hood all day. I'm hanging, you know what I'm saying? He like, man, I'm finna go to Hilltop. That's where I'm from. I'm like, look, bro, I love you, bro. Be safe, you know?
So against Julio's wishes, Bibby heads off by himself to the Hilltop Projects. At 3 o'clock, he arrives to the front gate and hops out of his Uber. Coincidentally, as he's walking towards the gate, Queso happens to be spinning the block. Unfortunately, he spots Bibby, recognizes him as Julio's friend, and he decides to run down. So while Bibby is gingerly walking and not paying attention, Queso is walking up right behind him. Sadly, he has no mercy.
I'm gonna say 20 to 25 minutes later, I get a call. A shooting just happened in Hilltop. I don't know, I'm not even thinking about him at first. I'm like, damn, because it's regular. Like, shootings always happen. Like, I'm like, damn. Somebody else called me. You good? Why everybody say you dead, big bro? My big brother called me. Jit, where you at? They said you dead in Hilltop. I'm like, hell no. I go on Facebook. A little boy just got killed in Hilltop, like 16. So I'm like, burgundy shirt. I'm like, oh God. Like, I just hang up the phone.
His mom and his grandmother begged for the violence on Jacksonville streets to stop.
Y'all get together and y'all pray. And put his guns down. Please put his guns down.
I'm gonna rock this city until they get justice for my baby. Until everybody involved are arrested, I am gonna shake Duval County.
That was like one of the worst losses, like, cause it's like, I just had told him, like, do not, like, it's hot outside, bro.
Yet another gut-wrenching loss for Julio, especially for it to happen like this. And to make matters worse, while he's grieving, the rivals give him a taste of his own medicine. Shortly after the incident, Queso would put out a song clowning Bibby and admits to doing it. You know me, bitch, I'm Queso, I smoked Bibby. Then he says he was 16 and I took his soul right up off the streets. This dude Queso is cold just like Fulio, but kind of understandably, after being targeted and losing his brother Willie, he really wanted revenge. You took my brother Willie, so I'm gonna take your lil homie Bibby. In addition, after allegedly doing this, he continues to troll online.
Yeah. We smoking on Bibby, you already know. Oh, he smoked that Bibby, that's nationwide and smoke Bibby to the face. I'm finna trademark Bibby. He finna be on like Google and shit. It's gonna be like, it's gonna be like 16-year-old got shot the up. Hey, say hello. I'm finna put that boy ass on Google. Smoking on the Bibby. I heard they let out 60. We don't show no pity. We don't show no pity.
Of course, Fulio is more than pissed, and as you would expect, he sends a blitz. I want Queso gone. Now. After allegedly knocking down Bibby, Queso makes the smart decision to stay out of Jacksonville. In particular, he goes on tour with Young and Ace, which removes them from the city for quite some time. Here we are in the small country city of Waycross, Georgia, located about an hour north of Jacksonville. Here, Queso and other ATK members are ducking low and staying away from the beef. In particular, they're barbecuing and listening to music at a hotel pool, not thinking that anyone will find them. But somehow, after posting videos on their stories, the rivals deduced exactly where they are. So while Queso and his boys are sitting back enjoying their day, the KTA hitters are on their way. After taking the hour-and-a-half drive, the hitters arrive at the hotel at 6:30. They instantly hop out of their truck and run to the pool area, and that's where they see their rivals. Bam! They start blowing, and Queso and his boys are blowing back. It's an ugly scene, and sadly it claims the life of an ATK member named Rollo.
And so far, there have been no suspects arrested, according to the Waycross Police Department. However, they do believe that this stems from an ongoing conflict.
A local artist, Kenyatta Bullard, whose stage name is Young and Ace, survived a shooting that ended with 3 of his friends dead in 2018. Now he is tied to another deadly shooting that happened Sunday morning at the Hampton Inn in Waycross, Georgia. Chief of Waycross Police Anthony Tanner says there is more than one shooter.
Any further, Bullard, whose stage name is Young and Ace, was scheduled to perform in Waycross on Saturday. It's unclear if he was staying at the hotel or just visiting. Now, on social media, a guest who was staying in the hotel recorded video of the aftermath of the shooting, but we are still waiting to get permission from him to show you that video.
The lesson here is that whenever you do something to Fulio, he's gonna get back and it doesn't matter where you are. But of course, this is a game of back and forth, and just a couple months later, Fulio would lose yet another friend. On May 7th, a close friend of Fulio named T. Schatz would lose his life while leaving a corner store in West Jacksonville. Now it's body for body on both sides, and the murder rate in Jacksonville is skyrocketing. And in addition to the bodies dropping, both sides keep clowning and self-snitching online. Like as the beef progresses, the dissing gets more and more disrespectful, even to the point where Fulio clowns devastating situations that he literally had nothing to do with. And that takes us to the mysterious case of Young and Ace's homie Corbin. Essentially, Corbin is a teenager who went to a job interview in the morning, and later that night he was reported missing. Well, when he went missing, a lot of people assumed that Fulio and KTA had something to do with this. But in reality, it was a completely different situation that had nothing to do with beef. Well, sadly, in July of 2019, Corbin's body parts would be found in a forest near Jacksonville. And as it turns out, he was set up by an ex-girlfriend to be robbed, and then they took him out to the forest and unalived him. The saddest part about it is that Corbin was a good kid and had literally nothing to do with the streets.
Corbin Johnson's remains were found in a wooded area of northwest Jacksonville. Still, no arrests have been made. News for Jax reporter Alicia Hatcher spoke with Johnson's mother. Alicia, Johnson's family, they're still hoping for justice.
The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office says foul play was suspected because of the way the body was positioned.
And I really couldn't identify him. I could tell you every day I went to work. You know, I would have my days, I would cry, come back to my desk, work. I seen him on a picture, and I wish I hadn't, because I can't unsee that.
His mom, Melissa Jackson, will never forget the day his remains were found.
They identify him from, you know, he hurt his arm, and it was the chip that was in his arm from his surgery. I was told that, you know, when you're out there that long, really none of you is left.
The grueling and devastating situation is no laughing matter, and just because he hung out with the Aces does not mean that you should disrespect his name. But in typical evil Fulio fashion, he uses this as an opportunity to clown. At first, he goes on Instagram Live and brags about how he could never be kidnapped.
The Corbin really did got kidnapped, like, he got abducted. Do you know how much sense that make? Cause when you grown, you get abducted. You don't get kidnapped, like, type shit. That man got abducted, real shit, like, that's my worst feeling. Kidnapping me, I swear to God, bro, like, that man got kidnapped, bro. Lost and found type shit. Like, I swear to God, on the news it said that man bones got found. Like, that man bones got found, just bones, I swear to God.
On top of this, he even puts Corbin in a song by saying Corbin got kidnapped, they found his bones, he was raw. Then in another song he says Corbin got kidnapped, how the a grown man goes missing. I understand that beef is beef, but at what point do morals come into play when we're dealing with the innocent? Before all this, Florida boys were known for being laid-back players, but now this new evil drill rap
is really ridiculous.
You can almost say that Fulio single-handedly turned things cold-hearted in his city, and of course, all the dissing of Corbin would come with consequences. January 5th, 2020. It's an early Wednesday morning and an ATK member named Butta receives some vital information. Specifically, a girl that he messes with informs him that she knows the location of a very close friend of Fulio. She tells him that Fulio's right-hand man named Lil Buck will be at a temp agency later in the morning. Obviously, Butta is excited about the drop and he instantly hits up his fellow stepper named Queso. Queso is also excited when he receives the news and he quickly heads over to Butta's. With no strategy or second thoughts, the duo now get ready to slide. They put on masks, remove their license plate, grab blowers, and head out to the location. At 7 in the morning, they park in front of the temp agency, waiting for Lil Buck to arrive. From what they know, he's going there to train for a job and to change his life around. But regardless of him not being a factor in the beef, they still want to stamp him just because of his association with Fulio. So for hours, they patiently wait for Lil Buck to show up at the office. Hours and hours go by and there's no sightings of Lil Buck. At this point, Queso figures that they're being set up or that simply Lil Buck isn't coming. So together they decide to give up and they head down the street towards a shopping center. They're hungry, so they pull into the parking lot looking for restaurants. Then as Butta is driving around, he randomly notices Lil Buck on his left. So quickly, Butta makes a U-turn and follows Lil Buck through the parking lot. He then tells Queso to mask up and get ready, I'm gonna pull right alongside him. Well, Buck has no idea that he's being followed, so he parks his car and gingerly gets out. And that's when allegedly Queso hops out of the car and does the business. Queso allegedly hops back in the car and they speed off quickly. After they exit the parking lot, they figure they're in the clear, but little do they know an off-duty police officer saw the entire thing. So as they're speeding down Merrill Road, Butta notices the cop car behind him and he begins to panic. This is when Queso panics as well and comes up with the worst idea possible. He turns to Butta and yells, "Bust a U-turn, I'm gonna spray up the cop car." Butta disagrees and responds, "No the hell you not, watch, I'm about to get us gone." He continues to smash on the gas and he busts a sharp right into a neighborhood. He loses control and smacks right into a pole. Thankfully, Butta and Queso are both okay, and they hop out of the car and run into somebody's backyard. With no better plan, Queso decides to smash somebody's sliding door and jumps inside the house. Butta follows him and says, "Yo, what are you doing?" At this exact moment, the homeowner runs downstairs and sees them in the living room. That's when they whip out on him and tell him to bring them to the closet. So he takes them upstairs expecting to be robbed for his jewelry. Instead though, they simply ask him for a change of clothes, which he obviously gives up. So they put on collared shirts and khakis, hoping that once they go outside, the police won't recognize them. Obviously this is but it ends up working out. Somehow when Queso and Butta look outside, there's no police in the vicinity. So they instantly call a friend to come pick them up, and 5 minutes later an orange Charger is there. They casually walk outside, hop in, and the Scat Pack is off in the distance. Somehow they completely duck police, at least for the meantime. Regardless though, what they just did is the definition of crashing out. All because you hate Fulio, you're willing to crash out on his mans and risk your life in prison. That's crazy. Either way, Butta and Queso assume that they're in the clear and they're excited that they eliminated yet another of Fulio's friends. Even though they can't seem to get to Fulio, they're dedicated to eliminate anything associated with him. And sadly, this includes women too. On May 8, 2020, Fulio's girlfriend would be shot while driving on a Jacksonville interstate. Thankfully though, she would be okay after being rushed to the hospital. Well, in typical Fulio fashion, he and his girl would go on live showing that she's okay.
Y'all thought I was dead. Yeah, she ain't underscore just yet. Y'all ain't underscore just yet, that boy.
Regardless though, Queso and Young and Ace would take to the internet to clown the situation.
Oh, don't look right. You finna cheat on her ass, cuz. Ugh.
At this point, we've entered demon territory, like there's no respect or morals on either side. Like you can't get to Fulio, so you're gonna target his innocent girlfriend? Well, as we know, Fulio was built for this nonsense, and KTA would sadly return the favor. Like, oh, you're gonna target my girlfriend who has nothing to do with the beef? Watch this, I'm gonna target somebody on your side who has nothing to do with it as well. June 25th, 2020. It's a regular Thursday afternoon in East Jacksonville, and a 40-year-old man named Busta is grabbing food at the Jack's Market. Busta is like a childhood uncle to Young and Ace, but he has nothing to do with his politics or anything in the streets. Well, little does he know, because of his connection to Young and Ace, he's now a target. At 5:15, he casually walks out of the store, and right there a gray Sonata stops in its tracks. Then 3 masked men hop out of the car and run down on Busta. This was yet another heartless retaliation on somebody who had nothing to do with anything. Because he was like an OG figure in the community, a lot of people questioned why this happened and who was responsible. While rumors started to hit the streets that not only did Fulio call for this, but he was the one who actually did it himself.
Yeah, Fulio is with the business, man.
Granted though, the rumors are all over Reddit and Twitter, so you kinda have to take that for what it is. But regardless of if he's actually responsible or not, his lyrics would not help his defense. Directly after the incident, Fulio would drop a song called CCG, which stands for Closed Casket Gang. In the song, he disses Busta by saying Chi-Chi was 40 years old running from bullets like a teen, Busta, he ain't have no face. So not only does he allegedly eliminate a 40-year-old OG, but then he disses him disrespectfully in a song. All of this to get under Young and Ace's skin. Sadly though, this would only be the beginning of Fulio's evilness. So now let's shift our focus to the other side, as Young and Ace keeps getting bigger and bigger and his pockets are getting fatter as well. This means he has more funds to amplify the beef. When your pockets are fat, you can get spanked, boy! Like at the beginning of the beef, as long as you stayed out of Jacksonville, you were pretty much safe. But now with money involved, anyone can cash in on your head. For whatever reason, Fulio doesn't realize this, and after the elimination of Busta, he flies out to Houston to lay low. In fact, he books a 2-week Airbnb where he can record music, party, and you know about the girls in Houston. Well, during his extended trip, he also goes to a block party with a famous local rapper. And that takes us to July 6, 2020. While at the block party, Fulio makes the dumb decision to go live and show his location.
Huh? Hold on. That Moochie.
Yeah, gang shit. Say what?
We're in the middle of the test. Hey man, we live, gang. Yeah, man. Boo. Oh yeah, with it. We're in the middle of Texas.
Yeah, you know who it is, the Richard paper right there.
Big bro, what you say, gang?
Out here in the trenches thugging.
In the middle of the month. You hear me? Florida in this bitch.
He goes on live to show what he's got going on, not knowing that there's people on his trail. Well, eventually police arrive and the block party clears out by 8 p.m. with Fulio still standing outside. As he's standing outside by himself, a black Nissan with tinted windows begins creeping up the street. Because he's out of town, he doesn't really think anything of it until the car gets right up on him and rolls down their window. They begin dumping at Fulio. He quickly runs behind a nearby car and begins dumping back. At this point, the car pulls off and Fulio notices that he's hit. So his friends quickly rush to him, throw him in the car, and take him to the hospital. He was grazed in the head, but thankfully he ends up surviving. For most people like me, this would be a terrifying incident, but for Fulio, he doesn't seem to care and he goes on live during the whole process.
And kill me on Kendrick. You fucking stupid.
You had a situation in Houston where you actually got grazed in the head?
I got grazed in the neck. They put like some little, I forgot to put on, they were like, you good, like you ain't got no entry wound or nothing, you just got grazed by the glass and a little bullet frag and you good.
Fulio was finally met with some consequences for everything he did. Kind of. Either way, the big question now is who did this, especially because it happened in Houston. Well, Young and Ace's right-hand man and fellow rapper named Fast Money Goon would admit to it in a song. I was lurking on his page and caught him lacking in Houston. We let off shots, then he went live, and I was like, we didn't get him. So yeah, pretty much Young and Ace's homie Fast Money Goon admits to doing this to Fulio. So now if Fulio ever needed more motivation for revenge, this incident would do it. You target me when I'm out of town enjoying myself, and then you put my name in a song? That's not gonna fly. And as you would expect, bodies would start to drop in the streets of Jacksonville. In fact, following this incident, 3 ATK members would lose their lives back to back to back. First, on September 9th, an ATK member and close friend of Young and Ace would lose his life while leaving the Regency Mall. Then, on February 21st, 2 more ATK members would lose their lives. These would be notable ATK members and close friends of Young and Ace named B5 and Michi. On the night of February 21st, they went to a Lil Durk concert, enjoyed their time, and simply went back to sit in their car. At 1 in the morning, while they're sitting in their car after the concert, a man simply walks up to the window. And just like that, 3 aces are gone in retaliation for what they did to Fulio in Houston. At this point, the bodies are piling up tremendously on both sides, and it would be hard to imagine that the beef gets even worse. And on top of this, with ATK taking so many losses, you'd almost imagine that they'd throw the white flag. Okay, maybe that's too far, but at least you'd think that they'd want the beef to kind of calm down. But nope, at this very time, Young and Ace does the complete opposite as he releases one of the most disrespectful diss songs in rap history. On March 28th, 2021, Young and Ace drops
Who I Smoke.
The entire song is dedicated to making fun of Fulio's dead friends and explaining how they lost their lives. From Lil Bibby, Trey D, Techie, Zion Brown, and plenty more. The mainstream industry had never seen anything like this before, name-dropping dead ops and trolling how they died. That's just blasphemous to everyone. So for weeks, the song blew up everywhere and pretty much everyone was trolling Fulio. The song pretty much had all of the rap world assuming that Fulio was some sort of victim, but we know that that's definitely not true. As we know, Fulio already has a short temper, so can you imagine how he received this song? Basically, the whole country was singing along to disses to those who were closest to him. Can't even imagine. So instead of playing the sympathy role, he decides to fire back in the most disrespectful way possible. Now that all of his dead family and friends were broadcasted to the world, he decides to do the same to Young and Ace, but even in a worse way. In his response called When I See You, he records the music video at the graveside of Young and Ace's brother. On top of this, he holds up a poster showing the deaths of 2, 3, 4, and Quan and basically makes fun of how they died. The entire song is flat out evil, and the rap world was literally shocked. And this is when the world is introduced to the character of Fulio. The world understands that he's a cold demon who has no limits on his disrespect. Because of the shock value, it elevates his fame, and of course it pads his pockets. At this point, he has enough money to leave Jacksonville for good and to take the closest people with him. But when you're this knee deep in a beef, there's somewhat of a pride of staying in your city, like I ain't running from no one. So even with all this fame and fortune, Fulio stays his butt in the trenches of Jacksonville. Although he tries his best to stay low-key and to move with caution, staying in Jacksonville definitely catches up with him. November 8th, 2021. It's a Monday evening and Fulio's headed to a studio session in Jacksonville's Riverside district. Because it's located in an upscale area, he figures he can go there completely unnoticed. So at 8 p.m. he arrives, parks his car in a residential area, and walks down to the studio. As he's in there recording bangers, his homies are recording selfie videos clearly showing him at the studio. Of course, they post them on their Instagram stories, and subsequently the rivals notice. Aw shit. Somehow they deduce exactly which studio he's at and they head there instantly. Obviously they know that Fulio's with a bunch of hitters, so ambushing the studio is not a smart idea. So when they arrive at 11:30, they simply wait down the street and observe what's going on. They're unsure if they'll be able to do anything, but their hope is that Julio somehow walks outside by himself. They wait in their car for 20 minutes, and then out of nowhere they notice Julio walking out of the studio. Oh my goodness, there he is walking by himself up the street. They wait for him to make it up Ernest Street away from their sight. This way if they turn on their car he won't be alerted. Then they head around the block and head down Ernest Street hoping to face him head on. When they bend the corner they notice he's right there opening his car door. So instantly 2 of the members hop out of the car and Julio hears them coming. Bam! They start blowing at him from down the street and Julio starts blowing back. 100 shots go off in under 10 seconds and Julio runs out of ammo.
I get to the driver's side of the door, I open the door. As soon as I get to sit down a little bit, blowing. So I lean back, up my gun, go to shoot him back. I shoot my whole clip and shit.
So at this point, while the ops are still thundering, he runs behind some cars for coverage. Julio figures that they got the best of him, but thankfully the ops are Ben Simmons in the clutch.
I run back to the front of the house. It was a white dude came outside. He like, what happened to you, good? I ain't even looking at my leg at first. I'm like, yeah. He like, man, your leg's bleeding. He like, you want me to take you to the hospital? I'm like, damn.
Julio, for whatever reason, in the moment he assumes that if he goes to the hospital it might look suspicious. So instead, he simply wraps up his leg and waits for police to arrive.
I basically got to see the situation under control, you know what I'm saying? So the police come, ask me what happened, what gun I shot with. I give them the gun and they put me in the back of the police car till the crime scene was cleared. Then they let me go.
This could have easily been the end of Julio, and on some level he kind of knew that. To say the least, it certainly shook him up and is the reason he temporarily would leave Jacksonville.
I ain't gonna count, bro. I was hearing them gunshots for like a week, just thinking about that shit. Like every time I go to sleep, I just think about that shootout and them gunshots. I'm like, damn, I could have been dead, boy. That shit was traumatizing, man. I tell you.
So now the demon rapper coincidentally heads for LA to focus on music and stay out of the streets. The place to be. Still though, he's able to focus on his music career, stay out of trouble, and of course elevate his music career. He's able to maintain this for nearly 2 years, and during this time, the beef in Jacksonville has completely quieted down. However, because of his silly pride and his itch to be in the trenches, he eventually returns to Jacksonville. And of course, as soon as he touches down, he's right back to causing chaos in the streets. That takes us to October 6, 2023. The king is finally home and he's already making demands in the streets. It's been way too quiet in Jacksonville and Julio wants to see some action on the rivals. So allegedly, he spontaneously decides to put $20,000 on a rival's head. In particular, this would be Queso's blood cousin named Antonio Tilly. Why he targets him specifically? Well, from what the rumors say, Tilly did some serious damage on Julio's side. So quickly the word gets around and some hitters step up to the plate. One of which would be a man named Jaquan Mills, who definitely needs the money and also realizes that cashing in will not be easy. Basically, Tilly is not the type of guy you're just gonna catch in traffic, you better put a plan together. So quickly Jaquan comes up with a plan which involves his girlfriend Diamond Harris. So basically Diamond slides in Tilly's DMs talking spicy.
Babe, I want you. I want to see your daddy.
Of course, Tilly falls for the bait and they set up a plan to meet up. He's excited to pull up at her house tonight, thinking he's about to have the time of his life. So at 6:30 p.m. he hops in an Uber headed for North Jacksonville. Tilly's in the Uber with nothing but "You Feel Me" on his mind. At 6:55, the Uber arrives at the location on Kylan Drive and Tilly hops out without paying attention to his surroundings. The second he steps out of the Uber, he's absolutely lit up like a Christmas tree. Sadly, not only did Tilly lose his life, but so did the innocent Uber driver.
A call for the community to rally around the family of an Uber driver who was shot and killed last month.
The Justice Coalition held a news conference today asking for help and resources for the family of Bryant Grund.
A family forced to start over.
I can't even tell you how this has affected our family.
Yet more senseless violence in the streets of Jacksonville, allegedly at the hands of Julio. Well, once word gets around of the passing of Tilly, the rivals desperately want Julio's head. Later this same night, Julio was out and about in the streets of Jacksonville by himself like nothing just happened. In fact, to make matters worse, at 10:30 p.m. he decides to head to the rival's hood. In particular, he goes to their local store, I guess to show them that he's not worried about anything. This is my city, I'm back, and I call the shots. So at 11 p.m. he parks his car outside of the rival's Magic Market and simply walks inside. So while he's shopping for a vape, he's actually recognized by somebody who's affiliated with the other side, and from there an argument sparks. The man questions him like, what are you doing on this side of town? And Julio's like, man, get the hell out of my face, man. For whatever reason, Julio isn't intimidated and he buys his vape and gets back in his car. Now from here, he plans on joyriding around the city for the rest of the night. So he pulls out of the market, heads up the road, and pulls a right on 18th Street. And as soon as he turns the corner, his light flashes in front of him. Two men with choppers start blowing down his whip. Julio tries his best to speed away, but sadly he smacks into a car. The assassins figure that they finally got him, so they gladly speed away. This time, Julio is gravely injured, but thankfully an ambulance arrives. He's quickly rushed to the hospital where he undergoes an extensive surgery. While he's in surgery, his mom breaks the news from his Instagram page. Keep Julio in your prayers, he was shot last night in his hating city. I mean, he is the hater in his city. But either way, everyone hopes he survives. Well, the next morning, the doctors present the news that Julio did in fact make it. This was the closest call yet, and it just goes to show how quickly the streets of Jacksonville respond. You got our homie hit at 7 o'clock, and by 11, you were hit up yourself. Well, because of this, Julio leaves Jacksonville not only to recover and to duck the rivals, but also to duck investigations. The loss of Tilly and the Uber driver was a major deal in the city, and he figured that it was only a matter of time. 13 days later, October 19th, 2023.
A Jacksonville double murder earlier this month was part of a $20,000 gang hit, according to an arrest warrant. We just received these mugshots of Juquan Mills and Diamond Harris, arrested last week in the murder of a local teenager and a man who was driving him for Uber. Community advocates say this shows how out of control gang violence is here in our city. News4 Jax reporter Vic Michelucci tells us detectives believe the victims were set up.
A high-dollar hit. Jacksonville detectives believe this October 6th double murder in Moncrief was not random. Instead, it was a gang-related contract killing worth $20,000.
The dollar figure that's attached to that is fairly high.
We found this information in the arrest reports for 22-year-old Jaquan Mills and his girlfriend, 23-year-old Diamond Harris. Detectives believe Harris lured one of the victims, 19-year-old Antonio Tilley Jr., who thought he was meeting her for a date. Investigators accuse Mills of killing Tilley instead, collecting half of the bounty on his head. Police say they've identified another suspect involved in the murder, but they're still trying to track that person down. Tilley's Uber driver was caught up in the violence and also killed, shot in the car he was driving to make a living.
After finding the DMs between Diamond and Tilley, police were able to completely open up the case. From there, it pretty much gave them everything they need to know except for who called the shot, who put the $20,000 on Tilley's head. Both Jaquan and Diamond discussed the $20,000 over text, but they never mentioned Julio's name. They pretty much just called him the boss. Now, of course, if Jaquan and Diamond are smart, they can use this as leverage to get less time and snitch on Julio. Now, of course, you'd assume that Julio would be nervous about this, but instead, he's only focused on getting revenge for who lit up his car. And once he finds out who did it, he allegedly put $60,000 on their head. Ooh-wee, things are getting serious. This time, the alleged bounty is on an ATK associate named Tiger Sparks. On January 4th, 2024, somebody cashes in on the check. Sadly, while posted up on Odessa Street in East Jacksonville, Tiger Sparks is sparked. At this point, Julio's feeling untouchable. Every time you guys try to get me, I send something back and eliminate your homies. I mean, honestly, the fact that he survived this long is pretty remarkable, especially given that he just roams around the city of Jacksonville. He's basically like that cockroach at Granny's house that just roams around, and every time you try to
kill it, it just goes under the couch or the fridge or something, you know?
After surviving all of these beefs and shootings and everything, Fulio somehow approaches his 26th birthday. I mean, just think about it. From surviving his early childhood in Hilltop, to what happened to his dad, to what happened in high school, and then all the beef. It's pretty much insane that he made it this far. So given all that, his 26th birthday is a major cause for celebration, and Fulio knows this. So of course, he wants to do his 26th birthday weekend in the biggest way possible. Now of course, celebrating in Jacksonville would be way too dangerous, even though that would be something that Fulio would do. But instead, he decides to play it smart and party 3 hours away in the city of Tampa. Still though, as we know, 3 hours away may be way too close for comfort. And to make matters worse, weeks ahead of his birthday, he decides to post flyers promoting the events. Aw, hell no. Of course, this tells the rivals weeks ahead of time exactly where he'll be on his birthday. Definitely not a safe move. But at this point, Fulio just doesn't care. He's showing out and basically saying, if you want to come get me, come get me. And that takes us to his birthday weekend, June 21st, 2024. It's a Saturday afternoon and Fulio is hosting a pool party at an Airbnb with his family and friends. The plan is for everyone to stay at the Airbnb for the whole weekend, not just use it for a pool party. However, by 7 o'clock a neighbor calls 911, they're all kicked out of the party and Fulio no longer has access to the Airbnb. So now he puts everything in his car and gets ready for his first club appearance of the night. At 9:30, he and his boys head out to the Teasers nightclub for the first appearance. He arrives to the club, it's packed, it's lit, he performs, and most importantly, he gets paid. Getting a big check on your birthday, there's nothing better than that. But little does Fulio know, while he's in the club, a couple of hitters are sitting in the parking lot waiting to cash in on his head. So now let me introduce you to the hitters who are ready to stamp Fulio. First, we have Alicia Andrews and Isaiah Chance, associates of Young and Ace's ATK. Together, these two decided to steal a car in Jacksonville and drive it down to Tampa. That way, the license plates do not go back to their name. On top of this, the plan is that after they catch Fulio lacking after the club, they'll get rid of the car and stay at an Airbnb that's not registered to either of their names. Basically, these two are professionals and they're dedicated to cash in on Fulio's head and definitely not get caught for it. But unfortunately, they're not the only ATK members who want to cash in as well, and let me introduce you to these guys. These would be Sean Gaithright and brothers Davion and Rashad Murphy. Not much is known about the brothers, but we do know that Sean Gaithright was a suburban kid just a couple years ago and was into all kinds of nerdy stuff. Why this matters? Well, you'll see. Instead of getting a Stolo like the others, Sean decides to borrow his mom's black Chevy. On top of this, he doesn't even change the license plate. This guy does not know what he's doing. Well, while Alicia and Isaiah are waiting outside the club, Sean and his boys are on their way from Jacksonville. Well, it's now 10:30 and Sean and the Murphys arrive in Tampa. As soon as they touch down, they get in contact with Isaiah and Alicia and they tell them that they're ready to So Alicia tells them that they're waiting outside the club but that there's too many police to make a move. She then tells Sean to go to her Airbnb and to wait there until it's time to slide. It's now 12:15 and Fulio finally leaves the first club headed to a second appearance. So at a distance, the two follow him to Truth 18. They wait for him and his crew to enter the club and now they start to scout the scene. This time they don't spot any police and they see that the security is very minimal. So instantly they hit up Sean and say pull up ASAP. So Sean and the Murphys arrive in 20 minutes all masked up and ready to bust. It's now 1 in the morning and Sean, Isaiah, and the Murphys are masked up waiting for Fulio to hop out of the club. Then at 1:15 he finally walks outside with his crew, however he moves to the car very quickly and pulls off quick. The hitters were way too slow and Fulio was able to duck his way out of there fast. Still though, even though they missed this opportunity, they're destined to follow Fulio to wherever he's going. So at a distance they trail his car and this is looking like a perfect opportunity. Then at 2 in the morning, Fulio pulls into the Holiday Inn in North Tampa. He quickly parks in the front of the hotel while his homie Omerta 5 stays in the passenger seat. He then walks into the lobby to check in, but then they inform him that they accidentally double booked his room. He already got kicked out of the Airbnb earlier and now the hotel that he paid for is telling him that they accidentally double booked his room. He's now really frustrated. So after they give him his refund, he has no choice but to walk back to his car. So he hops in the car and pulls out his phones with plans of calling hotels to look for availability. But little does he know the ATK hitters are parked right across from him and they're ready to bounce out. So allegedly, Sean, Isaiah, and the two Murphys walk up to the car. They pull up on Fulio's side of the car and before he can react, they absolutely unleash.
A crime scene taking up this whole parking lot behind me. This is a Holiday Inn right across the street from USF. Here, 4 people were shot and so were 2 cars. Police say they are also now a part of the investigation. A birthday celebration that took a turn for the worst. Now cars filled with bullet holes are at the center of an investigation to find out why famous rapper Julio, who just turned 26, was shot dead early this morning.
At this point, it's part of the investigation, but it seems that they might have been coming here to the hotel to get a room.
After a social media post from Julio said he and his friends were kicked out of an Airbnb. They found themselves at this Holiday Inn where hotel guests like Jeremiah Claypool had to be escorted to and from their rooms post gunshots.
I only heard one, it woke me up, but apparently there were more than that.
Police say they got the call at 4:40 this morning. Julio, whose real name is Charles Jones, was confirmed dead at the scene while 3 other shooting victims were taken to the hospital. No one has been arrested in connection to this shooting.
Oh my goodness, they finally got the boogeyman of Jacksonville. There's no way. At the same time that everyone was shocked at the news, they also pretty much knew who was responsible. But of course, if there were any doubts, these would be completely put to rest the next day. Just a day after Fulio's death, Young and Ace would release a song called Game Over, alluding to the death of Fulio, or at least we assume. After all the losses, the beef, and the disses, you really can't even shame Young and Ace for doing what he did. And when I say that, I mean the diss song, not eliminating Fulio, of course. So I guess now Young and Ace feels like he won the beef. The top dog is gone, and that's it, right? I guess in theory the game really is over and he won the beef because Fulio was gone, but the people around Fulio certainly do not feel that way. Even though they cut the head off the snake, it's still lethal. Directly after the devastating loss of Fulio, his KTA associates would get right to sliding. In fact, they would start spinning the city looking for anyone associated with Young and Ace or ATK. And just a week after the incident, they would locate a very close friend of Ace. On the night of June 28th, a friend named Fizzle would get torched while leaving his apartment in Orange Park. Basically, this was the message that the beef isn't over and we're gonna keep sliding for Fulio. So if you thought that the situation would get better and Jacksonville would be safe, think again. Well, now we circle back to the loss of Fulio. Alicia and Isaiah were convinced that they would never be caught because they executed perfectly. They used a stolen car from Jacksonville, masked up, had no fingerprints, and then returned to Jacksonville where they got rid of the car and all of the evidence. There's basically no way of getting caught unless somebody snitches on them. Well, little did they know Sean would be their complete downfall. Not only did he use his mom's car, but then after the incident he drove straight to his aunt's house in Tampa. And there he was seen on camera outside her driveway wiping down the car for evidence, with no mask on. So basically it would take Tampa police 10 days to track Sean's car from the crime scene to his aunt's house, where then they used the Ring camera to see his face. So just like that, Sean Gaithright is arrested and taken in for interrogation. And here is where he absolutely freaks. As soon as the police leave him alone in the interrogation room, he tries his best to escape. With his hands tied behind his back, he hops on the table and tries to bust through the ceiling with his head. Obviously, the officers see this on camera and they probably laugh. But of course, they then rush into the room and they tie him down to the chair. At this point, Sean's life is truly flashing in front of his eyes. What did I just do? Just a few years ago, I was meeting Mr. Beast and obsessed with video games, and now I'm about to face life in prison. Well, because he used his aunt's car and was caught on camera, he himself is definitely gonna go to prison for life. But for the others, well, we'll see. Because of the shell casings and the footage of multiple cars pulling off, police are certain that there were multiple shooters. However, because the others did such a good job of covering their tracks, finding out who they are may be really difficult. But if you're thinking what I'm thinking, Sean Gaithright may be the easiest person in the world to crack. Now, I don't want to put that jacket on his name, but a month after he was arrested, so was everyone else.
Now to an update, another arrest in the death of a rap artist known as Julio. Police in Jacksonville arresting 30-year-old Rashad Murphy after an overnight standoff at an apartment complex. They say Murphy surrendered just after midnight. Tampa police had been searching for him and 27-year-old Davion Murphy. Right now, Davion is still at large, on the run. On Monday, police announcing 3 arrests in the case. And on June 23rd, Fulio came to Tampa for his birthday. He shared his location on social media to more than 1 million followers.
Detectives believe that the ATK and the 1200 worked together to target Jones as part of an ongoing feud in Jacksonville.
The level of planning and coordination between these 5 defendants was truly alarming. It is clear that they all had one purpose in coming to Tampa, and that was to kill.
Don't move! Over the weekend, deputies in Jacksonville arrested 3 of the 5 suspects wanted for the rapper's death.
It's good to see that there's been wonderful progress made on justice on the homicide, the murder involving the late rapper Julio Fulio.
We don't yet know if Sean Gaithright snitched, but what we do know is that they're all cooked.
Put them in a gumbo pot and cook that motherfucker, Amy.
Well, I guess we can all say that Fulio definitely had one of the craziest lives in American history, and I truly don't say that in a good way because all this destruction and death really amounted to nothing. So to anyone out there who's in the streets or contemplating it, just know that it never ends well. Like for anyone. It's much better to be called lame or soft than to end up like Fulio. So if you're surrounded by people or a community that don't truly want to see you win, then do your best to get away from them and focus on your success. Trust me, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Now, if my words don't mean anything to you, then listen to Fulio's mom, as she truly wants all this to stop.
If Young and Ace was watching this right now, what would you tell him?
I mean, I really don't have anything to tell him, but it comes a point in time where it needs to stop. Because there's only 2 places it's going to, just keep it real, you're either going to be in prison for the rest of your life, or you're going to be dead. That's just point blank period. And the thing is, we don't have to entertain these people, these fans, to make yourself look cool or anything like that. And I tell my son the same thing. There's 3 ways out: jail, death, or just doing better. Just cut the bull and just do better.
Well, I guess that has to conclude the video. So if you guys made it this far, thank you. And I got a lot of things coming. So please leave a like and subscribe.
Peace.